Every single moment was an initiation. And if I could overcome it in the past to get to where I am now, it was there for me. And I'm so proud that I made it through it. We are way more powerful than we think. And so just to open your mind to that possibility of, can I do something that seems impossible? And so play with it.
Okay, let's just start. Welcome to a new episode of the Bridging Podcast.
Tomorrow is going to happen whatever we do. Is it better to go into tomorrow trusting a voice, a practice, process, a way forward? Or is it better to go into tomorrow filled with fear and not believing the things that have gotten you here so far?
Create a new reality. I close my eyes and I will be there. I will dream it. Welcome on the new episode of the Bridging Podcast, a podcast where you can learn, practice, and transform in all areas of your life. I am here with a beautiful, loving woman from Canada, Siena Vendittelli. Yes. Siena, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. All the way from Canada.
I am so happy that you are here. I can't even say the place where you're living. I know where it is, but I can't pronounce it. Can you pronounce it for me one moment, please?
Niagara Falls.
Niagara Falls. Exactly that. So, first of all, do you want to introduce yourself? And then I would like to introduce actually how we have met.
For sure. So my name's Siena Vendittelli. The last name kind of sounds like a pasta. That's how I tell people. And who am I? Well, I'm 25 years old and I was born to an Italian and Greek parent. My mom's Greek, my dad's Italian. And basically, I don't know how much detail I should give about who I am, but I recently just graduated from, my master's public health and honestly went on a journey of transformation to find who I was and to really understand the nature of reality. And so for the last year or so, that's been my main focus. So when people ask what I'm doing, I say, really, I'm just figuring out what this world is and who I am as best as I can, because I know there's so many unknowns still that I have to, go further into understanding. But that's who I am. And I'm just really grateful to be here and to be with you. You're so inspirational. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Siena. I really appreciate that. And I also love you said, like, when people ask me what I do, I say, like, I'm just, trying to figure out who I am, what this world is about, yes. And also eventually transform in the way you should actually transform. I add this to that, what you said. But I actually want to give a brief introduction of how we have met. So we have met in Cancun, Mexico, when we were together at the same event, Dr. Joe Dispenza Advanced Retreat. And you came already a couple of times. I came a couple of times. And so, in an event like this, me as well, I'm looking also for like, hey, who am I? What is my true potential? Where do I come from? What is this world about? What is it more than the Ozlem that is doing this job, looking like this, has these parents, I don't know, lived here, whatever, all these things outside, but who am I truly? So the second or the third day, I don't know, maybe the end of the retreat, somewhere in the end of the retreat, I'm at the restaurant and I'm with my roommate. She says, hey, I'm going to sit over there with some friends I know. And I just go there too. And you sit next to me. And actually that morning we had a meditation next to each other, but we really didn't talk. We just saw each other like, hi, how are you? That's all. Yeah. And then we sit next to each other and we just start talking and we do not stop. We just don't stop at all. And, we were just so fast, quickly connected to each other. I also felt like, hey, is she a family member or something? I mean, it felt so strong connection. And I know it might sound really weird because, I knew you only for 5 minutes and maybe the meditation in that morning, but it was so close. I really felt you were a family member, and you end up telling me like, hey, you grew up in Canada, but raised by Italian and Greek parents. So I grew up in the Netherlands, raised by Turkish parents, Mediterranean roots, and we just kept chatting. And then a few days later, we went on dinner. We saw each other almost every day. And then you told me about your story, how you have transformed during all the advanced retreats of Dr. Joe Dispenza. And I'm so glad that you are here to share that with the listener or the watcher on YouTube of how your journey has been. And it means really a lot to me, a lot. So thank you again. My first question is, why did you come to the Dr. Joe retreats initially? How did you get to this work?
Oh, goodness. That's a great question. So I'll just kind of give a brief background then before that'll lead into why I went to Dr. Joe. But before, from a young age, I was struggling mentally, and I was always told from family members, oh, it runs in our genetics. It's normal. Don't worry. You're fine. But when I was little, I just thought, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel good. I feel kind of crazy. I don't know what's going on. But again, you're fine. You're fine. So shove it down, shove it down, shove it down. You can only shove so much down until, it starts to overflow, right? Like it's like packing paper in a box. Eventually the stuffing is going to come out. So I felt like over time I was pushing and pushing and pushing, that I had my kind of first overflowing when I was in high school. It was probably grade 11. I think that's probably the age of 15, 16, around there.
Yeah.
And
middle school, secondary school.
Yes.
Or high school.
So high school, it was, continuing before, but that's when it finally was like, okay, I'm overflowing here. I have nothing left. And so that was the first time where I sought, medical attention. I thought, I need to understand what this is. And at the time, because, I was very much matter to matter, and I grew up with parents in the medical field, like everyone in my family, doctor, dentist, orthodontist, radiologist, surgeon, blah, blah, blah. So it was very much go to the doctor, go to the source, go to the healthcare system. It's the only way, and that's what you're going to have to do. So I went to various doctors and finally got into a psychiatrist, filled out hours worth of forms that I didn't even talk to anyone. I just filled out forms. And then eventually...
Was this at the age of 16?
Yes. Yeah. So it was, I believe it was 2014. Actually, it might have been... 2014 when I started, but then 2015 when I'll continue. But 2014, I finally, got the diagnosis. They said, you have obsessive-compulsive disorder, makes sense with your symptoms, and you also have generalized anxiety. Oh, you also have ADHD, and you also have depression. And I'm sitting there going, okay, what does that mean now? What do I do? Oh, well, here are some medications. Take them. No explanation. I thought, okay, that's cool, medication, but can I understand why? Oh yeah, because something was wrong with your brain. It's not functioning and there's nothing else to really do. You could try therapy if you want, but here are the medications. It should help, maybe not. Off you go. And I remember after that moment, I felt weirdly relieved that I wasn't crazy, but also really overwhelmed now that I had all these labels and medication, and I didn't even have an opportunity to talk about it. I just received it and I just left the office, and I was sitting there like, I don't even know. I don't know what this means. But, I called my parents and they said, yeah, okay, great. Well, we'll help. We'll try and support you in the best way we can. And that's, I think...
This was on the age of 16. So compulsive disorder, ADHD, and depression, all three was diagnosed. And you're 16 years old. You get back with all these drugs. You can use this.
Yeah. And, without the guarantee of it might not work because there's no actual medication. And this is what people usually don't know is there's no actual first line therapy for OCD because it's a mystery to them. So there's no, it's like antidepressants are the only thing that may work, but they're not meant for OCD. So they kind of tell you when you start your journey of healing through the healthcare system, there's a million different medications. And we might have to go through all of them. And it may make you feel really bad and you may be dysregulated, but we're going to have to try it because there's no other option. Unless you want to maybe go for brain surgery, but that's also not guaranteed. Okay, So I remember just sitting with that and then thinking, I still have to function in school. I have to get into university and then I have to go. So, all right, I'll start the medication and I'll do what I need to do, because at that point I wasn't functioning. So if it helped me function, I was willing to try it. All the while I was grateful enough to have my mom's friend be introduced into our lives, and she was very spiritual. So she was the complete opposite of my family. And it's funny how she came into our lives. So it's like one opposite end of the spectrum and the other opposite end, and they're somehow together.
So when you say like the opposite of your family, would you define them as like, they were believing the modern science, like, this is the science, this is the diagnosis you get, like based on studies and based on the science. And so this is it, use the drugs or don't use the drugs, whatever, you get prescribed. But the family friends looks at it from a totally different viewpoint. What viewpoint was that?
It was basically, she came in and she said to me, because I felt there was more. I had this feeling. And so I actually reached out to her and I said, this is all going on and I don't really know what to do. And I know there's more than this. And this is all I can do here for this 3D reality, but I need some advice. And she was like, oh, okay, this is exciting. Now I'm coming to her to ask. And she opened up her viewpoint, which was, there's an innate intelligence. The body is much more miraculous than you'll ever even know, because just think about how you're pumping blood, you're breathing, you're blinking your eyes, all without knowing. If we had to think about it would be really stressful. We probably wouldn't be able to do it. So she said, you have to trust, but you need to understand that there's so much knowledge now in the other direction. So like you have a strong belief system here, you need to build a belief system and a trusting and a knowing in this area, and you need to do your own research. So I can guide you to the resources, but you need to initiate yourself. You're the one to do all this work. And it can be scary.
You need to decide to go to that direction. But, when you're conditioned for 16 years long, like, you also live in with the Western world, like I do. I mean, we get conditioned everything like, hey, this is what it is. And this is what the science says. So, and when you believe a little bit something else, like, hey, maybe I'm even more powerful than my body. Are you crazy? Yeah. Is something going on with you? Maybe now you should be diagnosed as she has a weird personality disorder.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
It's so true. And then, like you said, also it came from, my grandparents are all immigrants. So they had that traditional mentality that was pushed upon my parents of go, go, go. You have no time to think about that. Mental health, I don't know what that is. I don't know what any of this is, but you just need to push. You just push through it and get over it. Mm-hmm. So it was very much like, don't tell anyone you're sick, push through it. And that gave me a lot of resistance, but I still actually had some members, especially my dad, who ventured into the spiritual realm, and it worked and it helped them, but they didn't have too many resources in that area. So they kind of said, you know what, if there's someone here like this lady named Jody who has more information, that's her life, I would recommend going to this. And I'm forever grateful for her. She was in Cancun, because she really was the start of opening up that knowing I actually had from a young age that I suppressed within me. And it felt like I kind of started to wake up. But you know how it goes on this journey. Your consciousness is at a certain state. You may not be ready yet. So I kind of woke up, fell asleep, and teeter-tottered back and forth of, this is...
So this was your first event in Cancun of Dr. Joe Dispenza.
This is my first... No, this past one I was saying she went to was my first one in Cancun. But my first event was 2022, January, Marco Island.
Okay.
So it was a year ago, a few days ago.
Okay. So a year ago, the first time you went with this family member? With this family, not the friend of your mom. You went to the event, Marco Island, Dr. Joe event.
Yes, I went there. She told me, I think this would be great for you, but I didn't, she couldn't come with me at the time because of COVID and all the restrictions. And so I just knew I had to go, especially after learning everything. I just had this knowing. And so against all odds, there was no way in that I could explain to you that I should have been there, but I ended up there by myself. And it was exactly what I needed that I didn't even know. And it opened my eyes to so many different realities that I didn't even know existed. And yeah, it was definitely the start, the new initiation of the rest of my journey, because I feel like with, awakenings, not even just spiritual awakenings, but this is just who we are as people. You go through little epiphany periods, and so it kind of builds upon each other, and you take the tidbits from the last time and you bring it forward, and then you have another aha moment. So this was my big aha moment, but I had ones before. So they all started to connect, and I realized like this is what my soul wants. This is exactly what I need to be doing.
And even actually, the pivotal moments, we have them. But before the pivotal moments, all the non-pivotal moments, they are needed and necessary to get there to the pivotal moment. So, talk me through a little bit like this. You just go to Marco Island. You're just a little bit on the edge of like, hey, what is this? You're just waking up, sleeping. What I'm trying to say with this, like you are just getting open to a realm of not the visible world, but something different that you can be really beyond your body, as Dr. Joe also has written, like becoming supernatural and break the habit of being yourself.
Yes.
And so you do the event 7 days long.
Yes, I do the event.
What is happening to you? How are you being during and after the event?
Okay. So it's actually funny because right before the event, I fell off a bit. And then I said, it doesn't matter. I'm still going. Keep in mind, I was on the medications ever since I was diagnosed. So it's been around 10 years at that point. And
okay. 10 years on the medication and still on the medication when you went to the retreat.
Yeah, still on the medication. Through that point, obviously tried other ones, added some, took away some. So this point I was on one medication still, and I didn't care. I just thought, you know what, I'm going to do what I can and I'm going to follow what this guy's saying. That's it. So it was the third day that something really weird happened, something crazy happened. I experienced things I didn't know were possible in this retreat. When you've been to your first one, you're not really, you can't be prepared for it. It's just something you throw yourself into and you accept it and you love it and you surrender. And so something started happening to my body and I felt, weird energy I never felt before. And I all of a sudden was sitting at the front row and I had this overcoming sensation of, it's like this, I could breathe, like relief almost. And I just was going into it. I wasn't thinking, I wasn't, aware of, I have to do this tomorrow or this yesterday. It was just such a presence that I heard a voice in my head and it said, you don't need them anymore. And I knew at that moment when that voice came in that it was, I didn't need my medication anymore.
So during the event, you heard a voice, whatever, you don't need it anymore. Yes. And did you stop?
Yeah, that night I never took them again. I left them there and I said, I love you for what you've helped me get to, because I needed the stability and I understand there's a place for the healthcare system, but I got it from here and I'm going to try something new. And that was it. That was my initiation, because I thought after that point I was truly healed. And I was, and I made the imprint, but then the work had to put in and my dedication to myself. I had to show up and persist. Doesn't matter how hard it was or how, like Dr. Joe says, the dark night of the soul, how dark it got. I just knew this was the way and I have to keep going. And I ended up throwing them over the balcony on the last day of the event because I really knew I didn't even need
to wow. In Marco Island.
I have a video. I can send it to you.
Oh, wow. Oh, you should send it. You should send it, definitely. I would love to see it. And so when you stop the medication, you go back, an event is 7 days. You go back home to Canada. And so did you go to your doctor?
Yeah, so actually I ended up staying for 2 more weeks because crazy things happened. But I realized that there was no need to really go back to my doctor because I really wanted to get to a point where I knew, with certainty that I had that feeling, but I really wanted to get to a point where I could go in there and there was no ego associated of, look, I got off my meds. It was like, I am just this person and I'm so grateful and happy. And, you know, I'm here for my routine checkup, but I also am off my meds. That was a little information I had to give you, but I didn't want it to make it a big thing while I was in the process. So I ended up not saying anything. And I just came home and I stuck with the work, and I ended up going to a bunch of more events. And, you know, just like, I feel like just like with anyone, when you start this, you just constantly start to become a new person. And so over time, you don't even think about the person you used to be. So when someone's asking you, you're like, wow, I can't even remember really the same way of that person.
Yes.
So,
yes. You know, I even feel, for example, sometimes, what did I do my first 20 years? You know, I feel like I was a totally different person. I'm like, does this person exist? Was it this lifetime or was it another lifetime? You know, a super totally different person. So, you know, you said like, you know, I knew it and I felt it. Like, I'm just curious to this process, because when I go to an event, you know, I go through a lot of roller coaster during the event, you know, where you're like waking up and then, oh my God, what's happening here? And the moment I surrender, you know, what happens? Like first, I've gone through many healings during the event, you know, a lot of anxiety and distrust, especially a lot of distrust. And first I was like, hey, maybe I should believe to trust, you know, maybe I should just, and then, you know, a point comes like, you know, okay, I believe that I just believe it. I just believe that my anxiety will be gone. And then there's a point that I reach with some of the things that I just know. I just know it. I mean, it's not visible, seen or whatever, and you don't maybe care anymore about the doctor reports, what they say, but you just know I am healed from this certain thing, from the distrust, from the anxiety. You just know. And you don't need to prove anyone. You don't need to tell anyone. You just know it. Absolutely. And Dr. Joe also says, like, you know, before it manifests, whatever that is for you, either it's abundance, either it's health, whatever it is, when you are already that person, and when you know it is that, you don't even care anymore about the result, but the result, the thing will manifest and come to you. You will draw it to you. Absolutely. So I'm just curious to this, like, you just stop using the medicine. You are a totally new person. And then what happened then to you? Like, you know, are you like, now I'm done. Okay, I'm a new person. This is it? Or is it just starting there? Or maybe, I don't know.
I think for me, the day I stopped my medication was the start of the process. What I mean by the start of the process is that I had to go through all of the ups and downs, and I had to prove to myself, not just believe. Like you said, I'm so happy you said it. It's a knowing. You go from this like, oh, this could be a possibility, to, oh, I really feel this could be, to, oh, actually I believe it, to, no, I know it in my being. And so I had to transition through that, because yes, on some level I did know, but it wasn't the deep knowing. So there were days where it was brutal. I honestly thought, you know, I for the first few months, actually, it was a big dip where I constantly had this voice in my head. Maybe you shouldn't have gone off them. Maybe you should go back on them. Maybe you should go back on them. No, see, you're crazy. This wasn't true. How could this be true? It was all the voices that were, to be honest with you, suppressed, because I never thought about actually being aware of who I was being. But because the medication in a way masked it, I was zombified. So I feel like during the first event, I had every feeling and emotion I couldn't feel for 10 plus years come up. And it was a storm. And I just knew, the one knowing I did have was, if I just follow what this is saying, and I know my soul knows this is something for me, and that's why I'm here, it's going to be okay. And I've been through hard stuff before. I can go through it again and it'll make me stronger. So I went head in, and it wasn't easy. Absolutely not easy. But I just started to shift into, I felt like I just kept shifting realities to this new person until I looked back to a week ago and thought, oh, wow, look, I actually overcame that. That's really cool. And then it was a month. And then I looked back and thought, oh, wow, this is even more awesome. Then it got to a point where I didn't even look back. And then one day I noticed from people telling me that you seem different. And I realized the thoughts I had about maybe you should go back on them, they weren't even there anymore. They just couldn't exist with this person. But I had to go through all of those doubts and fears. And I still go through fears. It's normal. But the way I go through them now with this knowing and these tools, it's so much easier versus before, where I actually thought that because a thought came that wasn't unwanted, that it was true. But now I know it's not the case. Just because you have a thought, it doesn't mean it's true. You have to decide what you want to do.
You might be also like, peeling off all these generational things. So, also, what your parents might told you, like, this is in our genetics, we are going through this, and maybe your grandparents, they had something similar like that, and you're peeling it all off. And then on the age of 16, you were diagnosed, you believed in it for 10 years, 9 years. You are like, hey, I am this. And now you are kind of unraveling of who you truly are. And that is energy. That is really energy. So, oh my God, this is so awesome. Siena, really so awesome. I want to ask you actually the person you have become and also becoming during this healing. Like, what kind of person have you become? Can you tell us about this Siena now? Is she a more loving person? How is Siena now?
So I feel, as you were saying, as you peel the layers, you go back, you start to become bare, and you start to become your natural state. And one thing I always, felt when I was growing up was I truly was a loving soul. I just lost myself and I forgot how to love. And so one person I feel like, again, is I feel like my true kid self. And it's like, it's such a magical feeling because now I know that I can be more loving. I am a more loving version of myself. And so for me, the work shifted to not being about the things and the healing. It was like, how can I be a better person? Truly, how can I be less reactive, more patient, more kind, more supportive? And so lately, my focus and who I have become, but I'm also still becoming, is genuinely a more compassionate person, someone who can actually understand, even if someone's yelling at you, wow, like this person is still beautiful. They're still a part of this world. And I feel, because I used to be there, I feel for this person, and I'm not going to give up my energy, but I'm going to use it in a way that helps uplift them as best as possible. So that's kind of who I admire now more about myself, is that kid aspect of that more loving, giggly, excited kid who had compassion.
That's how I know you, actually. That's how I know you. Giggly, compassionate, loving, energetic. But, I think it is the most difficult part when you said, like, how can I be more compassionate to someone that is maybe not being nice? And, at this moment of time, when, we are now talking to each other, it is very nice to say. But when it is really happening and you have a low mood, or you are in like, oh my God, what's happening? Then the work actually starts, because then you should do it, right? Like, I go through it every day. I meditate, and then I am just like super high. I'm just loving. I am on my bike to work, and I'm just smiling. And then sometimes something happens, and then my face changes. I'm like, okay, I'm being reactive now. And then going back to that person that you just created in the morning during the meditation, you want to be that. But it is not all the time this, like, great. You need to put in the work again, and again. So if we look back at the Siena before and the Siena now, if you could change anything that you went through, the diagnosis, I don't know, in your childhood, all these things, the drugs that you have used, would you change anything?
No.
If it was possible?
No, I would not change.
And why not?
I would not change one thing at all. And I've just come to this honest honest to God, just come to this realization probably in the last month, because there's times where I would look back and be like, oh, well, I seemed like it was easier back then because I was unaware. But now, being this person I am now, I realize every single moment was an initiation. And if I could overcome it in the past to get to where I am now, it was there for me. And I'm so proud that I made it through it. So I see everything in my past, because you know what? I don't even know what the past and future is. I just know now. And the less I focus on that, the more I realize, like, whatever that timeline was definitely served me, because I jumped to this now person, and this now person is someone I want to be more like, and I want to continue to be and grow and evolve to be even better. So I just see every opportunity as a way to become a better version. So I'm grateful for it. And I feel like seeing it as a challenge and not something like a problem, what Dr. Joe actually mentioned, is changed my whole perspective, and it's allowed me to overcome much more than I thought I could ever. So I wouldn't change it.
So grateful that I have met you, Siena. So grateful. So who would you recommend this work? I mean, you know, especially after an event, we are all so excited. I mean, it's really amazing. I think, you know, all the events, honestly, these are one of the best times in my life, really the best times. I just always want to cry, like, just from joy. I'm like, oh, wow. But, you know, who would you recommend to do it? Like, either, you know, read a book about it or do the meditations. You don't need to go to a retreat, you know, but really turn inwards and look for the answers inside of you and train your heart, brain to be the person you want to be.
That's a great question, because that's something I actually struggled with, because when I came back, I was screaming and shouting of joy and happiness, but people weren't necessarily understanding. And I learned forcefulness, it doesn't work. People have to be ready.
Exactly.
All you can do is be there and be who you are as this new person, to give them those resources so that they can start the journey themselves. So usually I just recommend it to people, especially if I hear certain languages like, you know, I feel like there's something more. This can't be all that life is, or I just, you know, I have so many things that I want and I feel like I'm not being that person. I look for little cues and I start slow. I'll slip it in and say, oh, you know, there's a great podcast. I can send you this podcast. Or if you want to read a book, if you like books, this book is amazing. I usually recommend Breaking the Habit, because I feel like it's science and also the applications to do it. And I listen, and I don't push past what they're ready for. That's a mistake I made before, and I feel like that can turn someone off right away. So
yes,
I feel like it's for everyone when they're ready.
Yes. You know, I feel you for sure. Like, you know, you're so excited. I was so excited. I'm like, you know, my brother should do it too. She should do it too, and all. But there, even the listener now, you know, some listeners might take, you know, every single listener would take another takeaway from this. Some might maybe think like, I don't know what she's talking about, you know, and they might be not ready for it. And maybe a few years later, when they listen back to it, they're like, oh, now it does make sense for me, or it might never make sense for them, you know? And so you really need to be ready to do the work and to really go inwards, go really, really inwards, because I truly believe we are not made only about this body we have and the brain that is in it and all the things what we have achieved in the seen world. Yeah. There's so much in the unseen. If we live on a planet in one galaxy, and if there are billions of galaxies, what does this actually mean? So how can we really expand our awareness? So grateful for you. Do you have any last thoughts or questions for me, Siena?
I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you. And I think just one thing to say to anyone listening is that what I would love them to take away, not want, because it's whatever people are ready for, is that the whole point of the story is to show that we are way more powerful than we think. And so just to open your mind to that possibility of can I do something that seems impossible? And so play with it, you know?
Yeah. Yes, definitely play with it. And I think, you are a very courageous person, because, I would love to be like you as you are now, to be sitting on the other side and then also tell my healing process. And I am in it. I am now in it fully. And, I go through roller coasters, and unfortunately, I can't tell everything at this moment of time, but I know that it will eventually happen. So thank you so much. Really, thank you.